All right, we left off right here. I'm going to ask this one more time. Is there anything we've gone over so far that doesn't make sense to you? All right. So we have figured out just anything relevant you can.
Okay.
Were you here when we did the miles per gallon program? Okay, because you can, between that and the other one, you should be able to get most of it. All right. So again, we kept the user in here until she or he put in a 0 through 8. Then we called the routine called call correct method, and we passed in that choice. So this S right here is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So we've got what's called a switch statement in here that says if we passed in a 0, we're just going to say program exiting normally, and we're going to return, which means get the hell out of this routine. All right. If we pass in a 1, we're going to call create new array. Then we're going to call display array. Then we're going to get out of here. The number 1 allows us to create a new array and then show it. Number 2 just shows the original array. Number 3 sorts the array in ascending order. Number 4 sorts the array in descending order. Number 5 will show you the smallest element in the array. Number 6 will show you the largest element in the array. Number 7 will show you the sum of the array elements. And number 8 will show you the average. Now, this line right here, everybody see this? That should never be hit. It shouldn't be possible because you only could put in a 0 through 8. But just in case something like that happens, just in case, I just said, should you show the menu again? And if you look on the screen here, a lot of programmers put the word break after that, but it's redundant because since it's at the bottom, there's nothing to break from. But you can put it there. It's not a bad thing. But anytime this, would you agree with me looking on the screen here? This is like a big if statement. This is like saying if the selection is 0, do this, else if it's 1, do this, else if, etc. And then at the bottom, that would be the final else. It'd be an if followed by 6 or 7 else ifs followed by an else. Does all that make sense? Because that's half the program right there. But now we're going to write the other half. So I don't think you have this. So if you want to write this, you can. This may end up helping you when you take your last test. I don't know because I haven't written the last test yet. All right? I used to have a student at one of the classes I taught years ago. No matter what I would say in a lecture, after a while, as soon as the hand went up, I knew what the question was. Is this going to be on the test? Is this going to be on the test? It's the same student, if you never heard me say this, honest to God, that one day missed class, came back the next day. I was standing, and it's not like it is here. We had 3 urinals, and I'm standing at the urinal, and he walks up and he goes, I missed yesterday, and it was the test review. And I said, yeah. And he goes, he says, well, can I get a quick review from you? I said, there's a time and a place. This ain't it. And I went back to my business. All right? So, will this be on the test? The stuff that's in there will probably help you when you do your next test. All right? So the first thing that we want to do in here, and I can toss that, is we want to write the function to create a new array. When we click that, we want 2 things to happen. 2, we want JavaScript to generate 25 numbers between 1 and 100, okay, and put those into the array. Then we want to take all that stuff and copy it to the copy array. So we've got 2 arrays, both with the same 25 random numbers in there. I guess there's another thing we want to do too. Then we want to print out those numbers. Does all that make sense? That's what's shown in the comment here. Randomly generate 25 numbers between 1 and 100. As each number is generated, copy it to the number copy array. So, arrays are meant to work with loops. I'm just telling you that right now. Arrays and loops, what's the old saying? Hand in a glove or whatever the hell it is. That's how arrays and loops are. So for var, I call my loop control variable LCV for loop control variable. Please look up on the screen, everybody. Okay? Remember that length was 25, right? That's what this is going to give us. So it's going to go from 0 to 24. I could do two other things here. I could say here, instead of numbers original dot length, I could say size, which would be totally fine to do. Or I could say 25. That's a terrible thing to do. And that's terrible because if I decide later I want to change this value that was up here as 25, if I want to change it to 10 or 50 or whatever, then I got to find every place that I've used it and change that. So that's just a bad way to do it. So I'm just going to go back and put what I had to begin with, which is that. Arrays have a property that's called length. That tells you how many elements are in the array. So this and 25 and size are the same thing. Does that make sense? All right. Why am I telling you that? Because I want to confuse you. Not purposely. Chapter 8 talks about two things. Talks about strings and it talks about arrays. This is how you use the length method with arrays. You use it differently for strings. With strings, you need the parens. With arrays, you don't use the parens. Why'd they do that? I don't have a friggin' clue. But that's what they did. They're not the only language that did it that way. All right? So we're telling we want it to do this 25 times. Does that make sense? This is going to run through this 25 times. So for each array element, which is going to be numbers, original, LCV, now I want to generate 25 random numbers. Do me a favor, don't type for a minute because I want to show you the way that we're going to do it that would be wrong. All right? What I'm showing you now would be wrong. If we did just this, math.random, that would give us 25 numbers. Each one of those numbers would be greater than or equal, to 0 and less than 1. So each number would be something like 0.3817653. That's not going to help us much. I think you'd agree with that. But when you call a random number function in any programming language, it gets you a number that's between 0 and less than 1. All right? What we want is we want to grab that bit of it right there, that bit, and we want to convert that to 38. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to show you now, yeah, you can type this in. Because that's what's on there is part of it. But I want to say this. Math.floor, paren, all right, times 100 plus 1. That's actually the right thing. So I'll let you put that in. In fact, there's only one more line in here, so I'll type in the next line. Because then we're done with this routine. All right. So please put those two lines in, then we'll come back and we'll talk about what each one of those lines right there are doing. So let's suppose the number that got generated was what I told you before. It's 0.3817645. I'm just supposing that's a number. It means nothing. So the first thing I'm doing there is I'm multiplying that number by 100, which is going to give me 38.17645. All right. Then I'm saying math.floor, which means remove whatever comes after it. Does all that make sense? It's going to sound like a trick question. It's not meant to be. What do you think is the opposite of floor? Well, roof, but what is this? Ceiling. So math.floor says round down. So even if I would have had there, even if this had been 38976, it still would have made it 38. We're rounding down. All right? But we add 1 to it. Because if we round it down, we could get 0. And we want a number that's between 1 and 100. This is going to end up giving us a number between 0 and 99. So when we add 1 to it, it's between now 1 and 100. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, so let's suppose I asked you to do something like this and it doesn't make any sense to you. All right? Then you've always got one of your best friends here, which says generate random number between 100 JavaScript. And we look, and I like the W3 schools. They're usually the easiest to understand. And there it is. That would give you a number between 1 and 10. Change it from 10 to 100. You get a random number between 1 and 100. I may ask you, when we do array stuff for the last test, to do something where you generate a random number. So remember, you can look it up here. You can go back to your program we're doing now. You can look in your book or whatever. But you should understand how to do that. All right. So right when we call this routine, we're doing two things. We're generating 25 random numbers and putting them into our original array. Then we're copying each number as it gets put in to the other array. Does all that make sense? Yes? All right. Now, if you look back at what called this, we wanted to call create new array, which we just wrote, and then we wanted to call this display array. We haven't written that yet. So what I'm telling you is if we were to run this program now, we put in a 1, and we call display array, well, what happened? Absolutely nothing, correct? And just to show you that, okay, I'm going to save what I've done so far. I'm going to go back to my index file. I'm going to run the program. And I'm going to, well, I don't know what happened there. I'm going to, I think this is the right one. Oh. Doesn't like something, so I'm going to hit F12. Please get used to hitting F12 when you're debugging your JavaScript programs. All right, it'll open up the console for you, and it says, well, it doesn't like something. It's telling me it doesn't like whatever is in line 129. And it'll even show me if I bring this up. I can go down to line 129 and look at it. Well, did anybody notice my error? Because there's an error in here. There you go. Those two parens go together. Those two parens go together. This one doesn't have one. So I need another paren right there. That was my error. And actually, let's see, these two go together and those two go together. I probably only needed one paren there and one there. That probably, either way, should work. All right. But now let me save this. Let me go back and try to run this again. Okay, I put in a 1. Nothing happens. Because it's calling the display, but there's no code there. So there's nothing for it to display. All right, so let's write that routine next. So I'm going right down below it, display the array. Now, what do you think that is? Anybody want to take a wild guess in gray there? What is that? Not all at once. That's the array we want to display. It might be the original array, or it might be the copy. We don't know. And this will say I want to display that in original order, or in ascending order, or in descending order. Does that make sense? I tried to give these names, which I thought would kind of make sense with what we were trying to do with them. All right. So there's not much code in here, maybe not even 10 lines. First thing I'm going to do is var output str equals the array in like I said, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more lines to type in after this, but I want to stop right there for a second. Whoop. All right. And even if you're still typing, I'll come right back to it, but just look up on the screen if you would for a second. All right, I'm coming back to here. I'm going to run this. I'm going to put in a 1. All right, still not doing anything yet. Should have been. I'm kind of surprised. I thought we would have gotten an alert, but it's not doing anything. Ideally, when we get done with this, it's going to come in here and it's going to say the array in, well, what's the order? Well, when we called it, we told it we wanted it to be in original order. So ideally, what this is going to end up saying is the array in original order. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Then all we need to do is put it in a loop and print it out. Now, I'm gonna show you something, but I'm gonna change it. All right. So don't type this in yet. We're gonna make a couple changes to it. It would make sense almost to just do this, to say for var LCV equals 0, LCV less than size, or we could use, again, the length, whatever, plus plus LCV. All right. Then what I want to do is I want to say output str plus equals the array LCV plus comma space. All right. What that's going to do is if I've got 25 numbers, it'll print it out like this. 63, 71, 88. Does all that make sense? But it's sort of amateurish, because when I get to number 25, it's going to put another comma there. I don't like that. That's not professional looking. So instead of telling it to go to 25, I'm going to tell it to go to 24. All right. So I'm going to say here size minus 1. All right. I'm going to change that too in just a second. That's the whole routine. Now, even if you're typing, stop for a second, please, and look up on the screen here. This is a bad way to code. I'm making the computer every single time. I am making the computer do that calculation. It has to do it because it has to know what size minus 1 is. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm better off coming up with another variable here. I don't know, end, which is a dumb name, but I'll just call it that for now. And now I'm going to put in there that is equal to size minus 1, then I change that to end. Part of my job, the way that I look at it, part of my job is to not only teach you to program, but teach you to program the right way. And what doing it the other way is not the right way. It's just not. And you might say, well, it's, how fast the computer does it like this anyway. Yeah, what if it was 1 billion that you were going through? It's still, the computer does it fast, but you're making it waste processing time. You don't want to do that when you don't have to. Are there any questions on what we've done? This says go to 24. Then when you're done, then just print out the last one. And now that I look at it, this might be a problem. Look on the screen here. I'm going to run this, but we might have a problem with it. See this LCV? Would you agree that I created LCV right there? Would everybody agree with that? Not a trick question? Technically, the LCV lives in here. It may not like it down here. I don't know if it will or not. So I would actually, again, be better off saying this. var LCV. Not even giving it a value, but just doing that. Or I could do this. I could say var LCV, and I could say equals 0. Then I don't even need that first condition in there. You could do it either way. That's probably the cleanest way of doing it right there. So I'll leave that up there, and you can change yours accordingly. Remember before when I ran it, nothing printed? Nothing printed because there was no alert statement in there. Now we've got an alert statement down on the bottom here.
Do you still need the first semicolon?
First semicolon. This?
In the for loop.
In the for loop. Yes. Question was, do you still need that? Yeah, because that says there's no initialization taking place. This is whatever comes before this, whatever would come before that is initialization. There is none. This is our test, and this is our change. All right? Now, you're all very trusting, but I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to do a run. I want to make sure it works. There's my numbers. Now look on the screen. See the numbers? 73, 59, etc. Why am I telling you that? Because I want to run the program again. And I'm going to type in a 1 again. See how they're different numbers? I should be able to keep doing this. If I kept putting in a 1 there, I'll keep getting different numbers. All right? So, hopefully you've got that typed in. The good news is we're going to do the sort ascending and the sort descending. Both of them have like 4 or 5 lines, and that's it. So those will go really fast. By that time, we're probably ready for another break because I have to go for my phone call, and then we'll finish this up after that. Okay? And then I'll have one more thing to say after that, and then that'll be it for today. My hope is by going through this a little bit like we've done, tomorrow we're going to go over Chapter 8, and at least the array part. To me, arrays are much harder than strings, but the array part will make more sense by going over this like we've done it here. Does everybody have this? All right. Then let's jump down to the next thing. Now, JavaScript is weird in the way that it does sorting. Okay? Now, if you would, please look on the screen. Don't type this in because I have to make a change to it. All right? JavaScript has a built-in sorting routine. Did everybody hear that? So I can actually come in here and do something like this. Numbers, copy. Remember, it's the copy I want to sort here. Dot sort. It actually has something like this. But that won't work. Because when it does a regular sort like this, it's sorting like those values are strings. Did you hear what I said? This is the most important part of this lecture. And what I mean is this. If I've got two numbers, 173 and 2, I'm not going to insult your intelligence by saying which one is bigger. But guess what? If they're both strings, all right, this one's bigger. Because it checks, it says 2 is bigger than 1. And it stops right there. So if I do a regular sort, it does what's called a real big term that just means it's sorting strings. It does what's called a lexicographical sort. All right, we don't want that. We want it to sort numbers. All right, so we have to literally write this. Function A, B, return A minus B. That's the whole function. That means treat them like they're numbers, for lack of better words. That's what it means. Can you stop for a second? Just look up on the screen here, everybody. Just for a second. I'll come right back to this. See this? I'm going to copy that and I'm going to put it in here. And instead of saying A minus B, I'm going to say B minus A. So this is an ascending sort. That's a descending sort. The only difference is first minus second or second minus first. All right? Now, if we did that, if we did just that, and right now displayed it, we would have them in ascending order, descending order. Did you hear what I said? If that's all we did. But there's a little bit of code we have to put in each one of these because, like I said, let's assume that we're pretending for a second. Instead of 25 numbers, to make it easy, we have 3. Okay? So I changed that size from 25 to 3. And now I come in here and here's my 3 numbers. 63, 8, and 12. All right? So when I do the ascending, it's now going to be 8, 12, and 63. When I do the descending, it's going to be 63, 12, and 8. Everybody agree with all that? But this is now my smallest number. This is now my largest number. So in other words, when I try to find the largest and I try to find the smallest, I could loop through the entire array. I could do that. And I could just say, check every value against the current one for smallest or largest. Or I can tell it to sort and give me the first one. Okay? So what I'm saying is, you notice how when you look in here, we've got sort ascending and sort descending. There's nothing after that. Everybody see that? Is that how yours is? We're going to put a variable in there. We're just going to, you can call it anything you want. I'm going to call it F. All right? And I'm going to say here, if F, you already know that's a shortcut for saying if F is true. All right? And the good news is I can copy this whole puppy right here, put it in there, and just change that to descending. Let me make that a little smaller so we can look at all of it. Come on. So those are the 2 routines. A little bit smaller yet. Right there. That means that whenever I call sort ascending or sort descending, I have to pass something there. You see what I'm saying? I have to pass something. That F is a Boolean variable, so I'm going to either pass true or I'm going to pass false. Did everybody hear this? This variable right there, that f, that is a Boolean variable, which means true or false. So when I call the routine sort numbers ascending, I'll either have to pass it something that's true or something that's false. And I'm literally just going to pass it the word true or the word false. All right? In English, what this says is, hey, if this is set, I want to display all the numbers because I just put them in, in this case, what? Ascending order. But if that's not true, I don't want to print the numbers. I just want to print the first number. I just want to print the first one because it's either my smallest or my biggest. So when I call this sort ascending, if you look up here, when I call sort these numbers in ascending order, I want to call that and pass it true. So you have to go back in yourselves to your call correct method, and for case 3, for sort ascending, and for case 4, for sort descending, we want the word true in both of those. Otherwise, it's not going to print. All right, so let me save this. Now let me go over to my index file and let's try it and see where we are right now. All right, we got a number 1 we can put in, right? Okay, there's our numbers, 19, 43, 43. Number 2, can we put that in? 19, 43, 43. Yeah, that's showing us our original ones. Number 3, that's in ascending order as far as I can tell. Number 4, that's in descending order as far as I can tell. And I also know right now, looking at that, 99 is my largest number. And I know that looking at this, 2 is my smallest number. There's no sense in me redoing this. All right? Anybody have any questions on anything that I've done in here? Then let's jump down, see if we can do the smallest and largest before the break. These are not big routines. All right? In fact, each one of them is a grand total of 2 lines. We want to call sort numbers ascending. Now, look, if you look on the screen, we want to pass false. We don't want it to print those 25 numbers out. All right? Rather, we want an alert here that says the smallest. The smallest element is, and all we have to put in here is and don't write SWAT, write sort. All right, now I can copy these 2 lines, paste them in down here, and instead of saying sort numbers ascending, I want to say sort numbers descending, and instead of saying the smallest element, I want to say the largest element. All right, again, you guys are really trusting. So if you stop for a second here, I'm going to run this again. There's my 25 numbers. Let's put them in ascending order, all right, which says I want 3. So it should say the smallest is 3. So let's check. Number 5, the smallest is 3. That's good. Then let's put it in descending order by putting in a 4. So it should say that my largest number is 99. And it does. So we now have zero, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 done. So the only two things that are left are the sum. All right. We have the sum and we have the average. Would you agree with that? That's the only two that are left. Now, one thing to realize. When I do the sum, to get the average, I want to take that sum and I want to divide it by 25, correct? But I don't want it to print out the sum. I just want it to print out the average if it's the average. So just like we did before, for my sum and for my average, for these two that are right here, I'm going to put another thing in here that I just called F for both of these. All right? And since I'm going to put a thing in there called F, if you'd please look up on the screen, when I call display sum of elements, I want that to be true. When I display the average, I want that to be, not say, false. So make sure that for case 7, you make that true. For case 8, you make it false. All right? And both of these are there, they have maybe 7 or 8 lines of code. Be nice if we can get this done and then take our break. So when we come down here for the sum of the elements, all right, I actually did put a comment here. For some reason I removed your comment, but I put a comment here that said loop through the numbers original array, adding each element to the sum accumulator. All right, so let's do that. But I'm going to cheat. I'm going to grab one of those for loops that I did before that actually was the size I wanted it to be. That one right there. I'm going to grab that for loop because I don't feel like typing anymore. I'm going to paste that for loop in and just remove the guts. So again, if you look on the screen, that's doing this. Though that for loop right there is doing what you see on your screen right here. It's saying 63 plus 8 plus 12. So in that case, sum would be 83. Does that make sense? But it's doing it 25 times. Again, I'm showing it very simplistically over here. Now, we only want, if you look up on the screen here, if I did this, don't write this down yet. If I typed in this, alert, the sum of all array elements is plus sum. If I did that, it's always going to say that. I don't want it to say it for the average. I only want it to say it for actually if we put in a 7 for sum. So that's if F that's the whole routine. Since I'm using sum in this routine and I'm using sum in the other routine, since I'm using them both in both routines, I made that global. All right. Did you all notice something too? Because I just did. If you look up on the screen here, remember when we did this? Largest and smallest, remember that? Well, looking up on your screen, why the hell do we need a min and a max? I don't think we do. That's code bloat. You should always get rid of stuff you don't need. So that was the sum of elements. Let's make sure that works. All right, I'll come right back to this, but let's make sure that that works. There's our array. 7. The sum is 1169, which is pretty close to 1250. All right, it's never, it's very rare that it's going to be exactly 1250. I do it again. I'm going to generate 25 more numbers. Then I'm going to do another 7. Notice that's 2511. But if I look at that, I must have a lot of big numbers in there. 80, 60, 80, 60, etc. All right. Either that, or I'm going to do this again. Let's go back and let's do it one more time. Let's do a number 7 again. Oh, anybody see the error? I'm not resetting the sum. When I screw up like this, I would love to say to you, yeah, I did that to see if you were all paying attention. I did that because I screwed up. I want to make sure that when I get into this routine, at the beginning of the routine, what I should have done was to come in here under the display sum of elements. Before we did all this, this is lug. I should have come through here and said what? Sum equals 0, right? Then every time I come through here, okay, it should be 0. Let's double check and make sure that that is correct. So I'm going to run this again. There's my numbers. All right, here's my sum. It's 1378. Okay, let's do another one. And let's do the sum. 1375. Looks like it's working at least. All right. That's something that that's an error on my part. And what would that be? That's a logic error, right? So please make sure that you come in here and add at the top sum equals 0. All right, then I really should move these comments down. So it looks like that. All right, we have one more routine to write, and that's the average. It's almost the same size as the sum one, and much of it is the same, but it's not. So I'm not going to copy it. I'm going to write it in. Does everybody have this? All right. Then we'll do the average here. First thing I want to do here is I want to do this. I want one of you to tell me what I'm doing there and why I'm doing it. Why am I checking to see if the sum is 0? Why am I checking to see if the sum... What does it mean if the sum is 0? What does it mean? We haven't added them up yet. So if the sum is 0, we're going to call display... Not display. I guess it is. Display sum of elements, but we want to pass in false. We don't want it to show us the sum, but we want it to create the sum, but not show it. Does that make sense? All right. So we're going to come in here. Now there's like 3 or 4 lines to type, and we're finished. So I want to come in here and say, I'll put in a comment that says, calculate and display the average. All right. And I'm going to say average equals sum divided by, again, I can do it different ways, but I'm going to say number original dot length. There's a problem with this right now. There's a problem with this. It's going to throw away any decimal places that we have. Everybody hear that? It won't be a true average. One way that I can force that to happen, and I've shown you that before, is I'm going to divide that by 1.0. That forces it to be the way I want it to be. And then finally, alert, the average of all array elements is plus AVG dot, two fixed, let's put it to 2 decimal places. That's the end. Except for one thing I didn't think about until I was just running the program last time. Again, let's save this. I'll come right back to it, all right? But now I want to see if it actually works the way we want it to work. So let's just go and generate the new numbers, all right? Then let's get the sum. The sum is 1221. Doing quick math here. 1221 divided by 25. 4, 122. And drop the 1. 25 times what? 8. Should be 48 point something. Would you agree? Should be the average. All right. So I'm going to come in here and do an 8. 48.84. That looks pretty good to me. All right. I think we're done except for one thing. You may or may not have noticed this. I'm going to go back. I'm going to run the program again. All right. So I'm running the program again by refreshing. Boom. And I'm going to tell it not to generate the new numbers. I'm going to tell it right away, I want you to display the array in original order. That doesn't look very good. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come through here and I want it to, I'm going to, again, is it a kludge? I guess you could say it is. But I want to come in here and when I start to run the program, when I start to run it in my show menu, all right. Well, before I even do the show menu once, I'm going to call create new array. Does that make sense? And when I call create new array, let's see, when we called it over here, we also want to display it so we can see what we have when we start. All right. Again, I'm going to save this. Let me run it and make sure. But now, when I go in and run this, notice I have numbers already. Do you know how when we used radio buttons and we forced one of them to be on? All right. You know what I'm talking about? Like when we had a radio button for male and female, we forced it to be one of, that's kind of what we're doing here. We now always have something when we start. We can still quit, not do anything with it. All right. But as far as I can tell now, the program's finished. Now, if any, I'll leave this up here and feel free while I go and make my call. If you want to move it up or down or anything to go ahead and do that. All right. Anybody have any questions? All right. Then we're taking a break now. I have to quick get his, well, I think I've got his phone number. Let me see if I do or not. No, I don't think that's the number he gave me. So I have to check. Maybe that is the right one. Yep, that's the right one. All right, we're going to take a break. until sometime between now and 10:30. When we come back, I'm going to talk literally for 10 more minutes. So I'm not even going to stop the tape. I'm going to pause it right. All right, what I wanted to mention to you, like I said, give me about 5 minutes, is if you go out to this site right here, which is on w3schools.com, so you don't need this, of course. If you just go out to w3schools.com, JSRef, JS, etc., all that, that gives you a JavaScript string reference. And what it does is it goes over the major methods and properties that are available for strings. All right? And then if you look, there not only is there one for strings, there's also one for arrays, which is pretty much set up the same way. And if you look through there, like I said, it's pretty much the same kind of thing. You've got array properties and you've got array methods. The only reason I bring that up is the stuff that we're going to go through tomorrow. If you've at least got that handy, I don't know, maybe you have a chance to look at it ahead of time, maybe you don't, but it'll probably really help with your understanding of Chapter 8. All right? So Chapter 8 tomorrow, and then what I think I'll try to do tonight is, did this help with arrays? Did it make sense? I want to write another kind of program like that, but with string manipulation. All right, then hopefully between those two, you'll have enough of a baseline or whatever that next week you'll be able to do the work for Chapter 8. Remember that next week, Monday, I don't know how we've got that even set up. I've got it here someplace. No, I don't. So we're right here now. We did the build a game, but we did the array program. We kind of flipped that. We spent it almost all on the array program. Tomorrow, as it says, JavaScript, we'll do some kind of a string in-class example. I'll probably flip this too. We'll probably do the example first and then go over Chapter 8. Monday next week will be lab all period. Tuesday next week will be lab all period. Wednesday next week we'll take the written test. All right? And then Thursday of next week we'll go through a jQuery example. I'll probably go back and rewrite that miles per gallon thing using totally jQuery, so you can see what that's like. A week from tomorrow will be lab all period, then lab. 2 weeks from yesterday will be your last test. All right? And I have to make sure by this date, I have to have, for every one of you, I have to have your logins set up, and I want to make sure we can get to them out on the Rankin server, because that's where you're going to put your portfolios. And then 2 weeks from tomorrow is when we'll go over updating that wedding site. You know, I'm telling my daughter I'm just going to hit her again this weekend and say, hey, you got to give me this, this information. And then the last week of class, we only have 3 more weeks. We got next week, which is the week of the 4th, then the week of the 11th, then the week of the 18th. That last week is 4 days, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. Those all 4 days are for you to work on finishing up any work that you still have, and also getting your portfolio done. Since you're getting basically 16 hours to work on these portfolios, I'm going to say this, you might laugh or smile, it's not meant to be funny. I don't want them to suck. I know you're in your first semester, but I want the quality of them to be good. You should have plenty of time to go over it. All right. And again, I can run over if you want. By that time, I'll show you a couple that are out there. And I've told this, you know, I'll be somewhat hard on you, but I've told the second year people, I'm going to be really hard on them. And this is 100 points, so basically it's a test. All right. So if you don't do it or if you screw it up, you know, you're going to be hosed. Also, hopefully, since we've got a lot of, you know, what do we have left coming up? We've got next week we'll have lab. All right. Other than a half an hour in there, you have 12 hours of lab. All right. 16 and a half hours of lab next week out of 20 hours. All right, so you have just that lecture day and the written test. So that's it. The following week, lab, hands-on, but at least 8 days that day. I don't want people to say it's the last week, because a couple of you have turned in almost nothing from the JavaScript portion of the book. I don't want that. The JavaScript stuff I made worth 25 points because there's more work to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 12, that's 200 points right there. So if you don't turn in anything, that's like you took 2 tests and got zeros. I'm not trying to threaten you. I'm just trying to lay out the facts for you. All right? That's enough talking.